Alright, so I was finally able to get the wall depth in, so that instead of it being top down like this, the top down is only for simple mode now, which is classic World Hearts game mode, and then stick mode and real mode have depth on the walls. Yeah, they're just barely like able to cover the player's feet. I didn't want to make them any higher because they start to look weird if the wall is taller. So like maybe I can draw it actually. I'll just try to draw it real quick. If I open up Paint, see like let me just pick a paintbrush. Okay, so if the wall is taller, like up to here, then that means it would go up to here. I kind of like when the wall like covers more of the player's feet, but so I like it if it were up to here, kind of like a little bit higher. But the problem is then there's like such a small little skinny rectangle all along here, and when the rectangle there is too skinny, it looks weird. So I didn't want to make this distance, like the height of the wall, any taller. And then I also didn't want to make it any shorter because when it's this tall, it can kind of just barely cover the feet, which I like. Whereas if the height were any shorter, then it would be kind of like you were standing on top of it if you went all the way down. And also because there's already like a kind of like a pretty big space, you can't really press right up against the wall. But anyway, yeah, so that's why I chose that height of the wall. And then this is called an orthographic view as opposed to a perspective view. Perspective is for 3D games. This is a 2D game. So this is just hand-drawn tiles. Like these. This is just however many this is tiles that I drew, mostly rectangles. The reason you can see the walls even though it's orthographic, let me just go like this. Imagine this is a person. The wall's not actually like this. The wall's actually like this. So it's not like a straight parallel to your body. It's like leaning away from you. So that's why, like, when I'm standing right here, this wall's leaning away from me, and this wall's also leaning away from me, or like, you know, here. I didn't want to make the walls lean any more because then it looks too weird, because it's already kind of weird that the walls are slanted. So if I make them slant even more, it's kind of weird because you're like, why are the walls so slanted? Yeah, and then also the darker blue color would take up too much space if I slant the walls, maybe like on here. And then if I slant them less, you can't see enough space. So the 2.5D effect gets kind of messed up if I slant them less. So that's why I slanted them that amount, and then I explained it earlier, that's why they're that height. Yeah, and then the alpha, the part that can cover your feet is alpha 80. And I put it alpha 80 because if the alpha is any lower, it gets confusing what's happening. It's like not clear what's a wall and what's not. So I figure alpha 80 is pretty good. If it's any higher, then you can't clearly see what's underneath it. And if it's any lower, it gets kind of like weird. And also that issue with the skinny rectangle, the higher the alpha is, the more irrelevant that is because it becomes like a bigger rectangle. But if I were to have lower alpha, this skinny like horizontal rectangle here would become more noticeable. So yeah, that's why I tweaked everything the way I did. I actually did have a bunch of versions I was going to show you, but it's actually kind of difficult to have each version ready to go, and I didn't want to spend like 20 minutes trying to get it all set up because I could be working instead. So I'm just going to, you know, at first the walls were pretty messed up. Actually, I'll draw you something here. At first I totally screwed it up. It was like this at first. I did the orthographic wrong. So this line and this line were both perpendicular, like parallel. And then everything got like, so like this line would be right here, and this wall would be way taller. At first I messed it up, so the perspective wasn't even correct. Then the second version, it was way too small. Then the third version, like, I think it was too slanted or whatever. But yeah, I ended up tweaking it pretty darn a lot. There were many versions because the walls are so incredibly important. They're like all over the entire game that it's worth the extra effort to really go above and beyond and like tweak it down to like down to the pixel. So like the height is something like 37.5% of the way from here to here or something like that, and then the slanting's like is like 8.5 or something. I don't even have like clean numbers. I like first I was at like clean numbers like 10 and 20, and then like 15 and 25, and then I got down to like decimal places where I was tweaking it each time. And every time I tweak it, I have to like rebuild this sprite sheet where I like define, I cut them into categories, top and bottom. Top is the part that can cover the player, and then the bottom is the rest. And then I just give them each a name, like top full, one side or whatever. I have to come up with better names, but I'm going to do it later. But yeah, I can't just easily like change a value, like, I can't just go into my code and be like, oh, this is, go like that. I have to actually go through and spend about an hour tweaking entire sprite sheet every time I want to check a different height or whatever. So I was just going like all day for like 2 days, tweaking it over and over and over again. And that's how I got to this. And then another thing I could mention is there's two border sizes. There's the thick border, which represents the actual like hit boundary. And then there's the thinner border, which is just for aesthetics. And I like fade the thick border behind here in a way that's actually not right. I do this thick border, if it were fading naturally, it would actually be a lot lighter, I think, here. It's a bit confusing. This thing, I took some artistic liberties with it to make it look a bit better. But yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, I guess. Yeah, and then also in like stick and real mode, there's two colors for the main portion, whereas in simple mode there's like this. I call this the background. In simple mode there's one background color, and then in stick mode and real mode there's two background colors. So what I do is to determine the simple mode color, I just blend like 66% of the way between these two, and then that way when I choose like a random theme, such as this one, if I switch to simple mode, it won't be like a completely different color or something. It'll always be blended between these two. Yeah, and then the map uses the simple mode background color. So like if I go to colorblind, you could see like the top is black and this is pink. So the blended color ends up being like purple. So that's why the map is purple here, the walls. Even though there's no purple that you can see here, I decided that the simple mode wall color makes the most sense. I could have black here instead of purple. I could choose always the top color here, but I don't want to ignore this color. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But yeah, this task was like ultra important because the walls are just all over the place everywhere. So I really put forth my maximum effort onto this task. And it's weird because I've been developing World's Hardest Game 1, 2, 3, and 4 for so many years, seeing it like this. So I'm so used to seeing it like this. And by the way, I'm going to tweak these colors a bit, actually, now that I think about it. They're a bit weird. But in any case, I'm so used to seeing it purely bird's eye view like this, that to like all of a sudden completely change the whole look of the game and go 2.5D like that was really like, there's like a psychological block almost, like I'm scared to do it because I'm so used to seeing the walls like this that it's like it's so weird to wrap my head around that I'm gonna like completely change the look of the walls for the whole game, they're visible like absolutely all over the place. So it was like almost like a scary task to do, kind of, because it was like so important, and I'm so used to seeing it the other way. But anyway, I'm really happy actually. At first, I went back and forth, like not really that happy, but I kind of arrived at the conclusion that I'm overall quite happy with how it turned out. It just looks a little bit awkward, but overall, I'm quite happy with it. So, yeah, the walls now have depth. It now looks completely different than it used to, as you can see. The code is, I still need to simplify the logic a bit, but what I do is on every tile, I'm going to maybe improve performance a bit too. On every tile, I just say, here's all the possible different images that can be on the tile, which are mainly these. And then in simple mode, I don't use sprites. I just use programming to generate these are called render textures, which are higher performance than like other ways of doing it. So this is where I store all the render textures. And then when you create a tile, all it does is I separate it between top and bottom, although it's kind of a weird way of separating it. I need kind of a better system. But I pick the top. First I determine like which top outline I need out of one of these and which top background I need out of one of these. And so I take the tile, and then I look what tiles on the bottom left, the bottom right, the left and the right. So I know the tiles around the tile. And then based on the tiles around the tile, I just kind of do logic. And I determine which, texture to show. So like, for example, here, the tile beneath you is a boundary, and the tile on the left is empty, and the tile on the bottom left is a boundary. So that means you need an X top tile. And yeah, the naming is pretty bad. I'm going to come up with a better naming. It's just kind of difficult. It would help if I had the slopes too, because I'm going to have diagonal tiles eventually. So if I knew I'm going to have to do the slopes first and then fix all the naming after, because it's too hard to think about. But yeah, one of the benefits of this system, where I'm kind of, instead of placing I don't treat this square here, for example, as one tile. It's or as one texture. It's a bunch of textures like layered on top of each other. And the reason I do it that way, as opposed to just drawing this entire image onto one tile, onto one texture, is because when I add in slopes, all the different combinations of the way the slopes can connect to the tiles, to the boundaries and stuff, when you layer it, the total amount of images you need is way fewer than if you define a unique 200 by 200 image for each tile. There might be like 1,000 combinations. Whereas if you do it in pieces that get layered on top of each other, there might only be like 20 or 30 or 40 or something like that. More than 20, because I already have like 20. But it's going to be like 40 or something like that total tile textures that I layer on top of each other. Yeah, there's some finesse I need to do with you. I'm using a library called Pixie.js, which is for like, it's not a game engine, it's low level. It's kind of like to prevent you from having to reinvent the wheel. And one of the things Pixie.js does is it can like produce sprites and textures out of images. But the problem with tiling using Pixie.js is the sprites that it produces, when it like cuts a piece of a rectangle out of an image to create a texture, the rectangle isn't actually as precise as you want it. So if you don't do it right, you get little gaps between the tiles. So one thing you might have noticed is like every time I define a tile, the red square is the actual size of the tile, and then the purple square is the extended size. And then that way, when I cut a square out of the image, if it's slightly off and it's slightly too big, I won't get a gap. I'll get like more of the proper like kind of image. So yeah, getting all these like pixel perfect exactly like I want them, and then having to do it like 10 times for each version of the walls to tweak the height and the slanting and stuff. It was just really not something I want to do again. I'm glad that I'm done. But it was overall pretty good. It's just like the tweaking overall. The tweaking part is the toughest, or not the toughest, but it's the most annoying part, because it's not easy to change the values and see what the outcome's going to be. But anyway, so yeah, I pretty much explained everything. Overall, I'm really happy with the new tile depth. I think it's going to work really well. So I guess that's it. So yeah, I did a few videos like recently pretty close together. But now what I'm going to do is I'm not taking a break. I'm still working on the game, but I'm going to do a bunch of like programming related stuff that isn't really making for a good video. It's like little mini tasks that I kind of gather up over time that I just need to kind of like tie the knot on, that are nothing really worth making a video on, but just kind of smaller stuff. Most of this stuff isn't. I scrolled down too far actually, but yeah. And also with noting is in real mode, the background tiles and the walls probably won't look like this. This will probably only be for stick mode. For real mode, I'll probably add some like more character to them. Like it won't be just a solid color. So. But yeah, for now, the real mode is coming way later anyway. The next release of the game is just going to be simple mode and stick mode. So yeah, it's just going to be like this or like this. Okay, so it's going to be a little while before my next video, but I'm definitely making good progress, and yeah, I think it's going quite well now. I really like the new walls. I can't believe it looked like this before. Like I'm so used to now. Now that it looks like this, I don't like looking at it like this. It's weird that it was like this for so many years. And then when I was first making the walls, it was weird that I was changing it. And now that I've seen it like this, it's weird to see it like this. It's just, but yeah, anyway. So I'm gonna do a bunch of programming over the next month or two, and then I'll get back into some cooler like tasks to show off, and the game will get done eventually. It's going a bit slow, but it'll get done eventually.